Hey guys, how are you? I just got home from work, took a little walk down here and thought I would address a few things from the Fiskars handle shock video. A few of you have taken it very seriously and addressed some of the issues that I brought up. So I wanted to return the favor and take your video seriously, specifically Brian Two Bears and Vintage Axe Hoarder. Those guys took this very seriously. I thank you for that. And I want to address some things not in any particular order. First of which, though, is that I do not hate Wrangler Star. Not at all. That guy has worked very hard on his channel. He deserves the audience that he gets. Obviously, I don't disagree with his philosophy, or at least this particular statement. But let's put that to rest. You know, I don't hate Wrangler Star, okay? Second of all, no hard feelings anyway. It was never intended that. I never was directing the video at any one person. I wasn't even thinking of any one person. It was more or less just that general sentiment that I had heard echoed throughout the axe community that plastic handles, specifically the Fiskars, were no good because of handle shock. And I was merely saying that I didn't think it was the case. Let me then say that Joey reversed course and said that he was merely echoing that sentiment and hadn't actually used one. And Vintage Axe Hoarder did a serious test. I'll link that in the doobly-doo below. You should definitely check it out. And he concluded that it was more or less negligible, that it was insignificant, if at all, though he did notice a slightly more shock when he was busting up some gnarly locust rounds in his hands, specifically from that severe hook that the Fiskars has. And I agree, I do not like that severe hook on any axe, specifically the Grand Force Brooks axe handles. They have that severe hook. I used that for like an hour and had a gnarly blood blister on my hand. You got to get rid of that. Now that brings up another point that I wanted to address, which is gloves or no gloves. Typically when I'm splitting, I'm wearing gloves because I'm handling large rounds and I've just used the chainsaw. So I'm typically wearing gloves, and I'm not so concerned about the handle shock in my hands. I'm more concerned about the handle shock transferring up my arms. I should also say this is something I never noticed before until my case of tennis elbow. Now I'm more sensitive to it, which is why I brought it up and offered it to you guys. There's Joe's plane. The other thing I wanted to address is hollow versus solid. So not all plastic handles are created equally, right? The Fiskars is hollow, and I've already addressed that the shock's supposed to run through that hollow handle and out, not through your arms. I don't know if that's true, but there are other types of plastic handles. So I don't think we can compare thickness on the Fiskars with the thickness of your splitting axe. It's just a different kind of axe. I hope that makes sense. The other thing I wanted to address is head geometry. Obviously, I didn't talk about the geometry of the head, but Fiskars is just a wedge. A big, thick wedge that busts the wood open. When the head geometry is insufficient for splitting, obviously you're going to get a lot more shock in your arms because you're going to get that dreaded bounce more often, right? So I don't have a whole lot to say on head geometry other than if it's not working, naturally you're getting more shock in your hands. So that's another factor that needs to be considered when you're talking about handle shock. What else? Shape of the handle is something else we should consider. Straight or curvy, whether or not these have any impact on handle shock. I haven't really thought about it, but it's a factor, another factor we should be thinking about. Grip. A lot of guys were talking about grip, that stranglehold you have on an axe and loosening up or developing a lighter touch. And I don't disagree, though you do have to hold on to the axe. You know, you can't let it go. It's kind of hard to determine how hard somebody's squeezing and how hard they need to. But yes, that definitely factors in the grip and how light or how strong you're holding onto the axe. What else do we got here? Oh, it's worth noting, I think that Dudley Cook didn't like these plastic handles as well. He merely notes in his axe book that everybody wanted these plastic handles for a long time, and then suddenly he saw them phased out, and that's worth stating, right? But I don't think they were hollow. I think they were the solid plastic handles. I also think it matters whether you're splitting the rounds on a block, on the ground standing up, or sideways on the ground. So somebody asked, is it an East Coast thing to split the rounds sideways like that? To be quite honest with you, I don't really see anybody do that, and I don't know why. That's the way the logs are lying when you cut the tree down, so that's the way I hit them. If you have a tough round, it's going to be harder to bust that way because there's no back stop, right? It's not back splitting. And you guys remember the first law, Newton's first law, right? Everything has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, the opposite is more equal, as it were. You don't lose any velocity or lose any energy, I should say, when it's backed up. So if it's on a block, you're more likely to receive more shock if the round doesn't bust. Does that make sense? The ground is going to absorb some of that energy, and when it's sideways, you're going to lose more of that energy moving the round. I hope that makes sense, but I do think you get less shock when they're sideways, but it's not as efficient. Finally, I just want to say that I don't think in the grand scheme of things, any of this axe stuff really matters. But here's the rub. The rub? Who says rub? Here's the rub. I'm really trying with my channel to smuggle in philosophy. I think some of you already got that, but basically my concern is this thing we do where we take something or somebody's opinion for granted without putting it to the test and acquiring firsthand experience, which is fine. There's plenty of stuff we have to do that for. You have to trust secondhand sources, and there's ways of vetting that. You have to do that. That's another conversation. But I think it goes without saying that firsthand experience is the experience you can trust the most. Yes, your senses deceive you, all that, but it's better, right? But what we do, all of us, I'm guilty of it, you're guilty of it, we're all guilty of it. We've all been guilty of it, we'll be guilty of it again. But we should try to avoid it, and that's hearing an opinion that we think has some value, whether because it makes theoretical sense or because it was said by somebody that we look up to, and then we repeat it ad nauseum. We repeat it as if it was gospel. That's what I'm worried about from a philosophical perspective. It doesn't matter all that much in the axe arena, but it does matter in other areas of your life. And I would urge you to be on the lookout for it in your own thinking, but also point it out in other people's thinking when it makes sense. Don't be an asshole, but point it out in other people's thinking when it makes sense. That's all I want to say about that. But I do want to shout out and thanks to Brett Brown. I don't know this guy at all. I have no idea how he managed to get this to me. He lives in New Zealand, but he sent me this gorgeous mushroom knife. He knows I'm into mushroom hunting, and this thing is just absolutely gorgeous. Laminated handle there. Thank you. I don't know what else to say, man. I'm not good receiving charity. I know it's not charity, but gifts. I'm not good at it. I'd much rather give it than receive it. But thank you, Brett, sincerely. Thank you for sending this all this way. I know it wasn't cheap to do. I also want to thank Josh. Josh was the winner of our last X giveaway, and I won't read it all, but he wrote me a really nice note. And that means a lot. Words, when written sincerely or said sincerely, mean a lot. They have meaning. I hope these ones have meaning as well. Until next time, guys, stay safe. Feel free to disobey in the doobly-doo below, and I'll see you on the next one.